I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam a door. I just stood there in my own kitchen while my stepson held up his phone smiling and showed me the one place I didn't exist. Him, my wife, his real father, at a graduation party I paid for. Couldn't for Sir when I was still holding the envelope. That's the part I remember most. Not the photos, not even what he said. Just that envelope in my hand like it weighed 50 pounds. 5 crisp $100 bills inside. I'd stopped by the bank that Friday afternoon, same teller I've had for years over on Main Street in Carmel. Told her it was for my son. She smiled and said congratulations. I didn't correct her. I walked into the kitchen that Sunday night expecting something simple. Maybe Vanessa had planned a dinner. Maybe we'd grill out. Ethan had just graduated from Carmel High, and I figured we'd do something small, family only. The house was quiet in that odd way that doesn't feel peaceful, the kind that makes you pause halfway through setting your keys down. Vanessa was by the sink, not washing anything, just standing there, her back to me. Ethan leaned against the counter, scrolling on his phone, half smirk on his face like always these days. 18 going on 30, or at least he thought so. I set the envelope on the counter next to the mail. Hey, I said, keeping it light. So when are we doing your graduation party? Vanessa didn't turn around, didn't say a word, and something in my chest tightened before I even knew why. Ethan looked up, then he laughed. Not loud, not cruel exactly, just amused. That was last Saturday. I blinked. What? He pushed off the counter and walked over, already unlocking his phone. Yeah, Rick put something together. It was pretty nice, actually. Rick. He said the name like it belonged there, like it had always belonged there. Ethan turned the phone toward me. Here. And there it was. A whole afternoon I didn't know existed. White folding tables under a pavilion out in Fishers. Blue and white decorations, Colts colors. A cake with his name piped across it in frosting. People I recognized. Neighbors. A couple guys from the baseball league he used to play in. Vanessa stood right next to him in one photo, hand on his shoulder, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. And then there was Rick, front and center, arm around Ethan, big grin, like he'd been there every day for the last 13 years. I stared at the screen a second too long. The air conditioner kicked on behind me, blowing cold across the back of my neck. I remember that. Funny what sticks. I cleared my throat. I didn't know about this. Ethan shrugged. Yeah, we figured you were busy. Busy. I work 50 hours a week to keep that house running, and I was busy. I looked over at Vanessa. You didn't think to tell me. She finally turned, but she didn't meet my eyes. Just dried her hands on a dish towel that wasn't even wet. I didn't want drama, Daniel. That was it. That was all I got. No apology, no explanation, just inconvenience. Ethan swiped to the next photo. This one's my favorite. It was the three of them. Him in the middle, cap tilted back a little, that same grin he had when he was 10 and hit his first home run. Vanessa on one side, Rick on the other. A family picture. Without me, I felt something shift in my chest. Not explode, not snap, just move, like a gear slipping out of place. I see, I said, and I did. A few seconds passed. Nobody spoke. The fridge hummed. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Ethan locked his phone and slid it into his pocket. It wasn't a big deal, he said. Rick wanted it to be more of a father-son thing. Father-son thing. I nodded once, slow. Got it. Vanessa finally looked at me then, like she was trying to read something on my face. Daniel. But I picked up the envelope before she could finish. Held it for a second, felt the edges press into my palm. I was going to give this to you, I said, looking at Ethan. Thought it might help with summer expenses before college. He glanced at it, then at me. Well, I mean, you still can. Just like that. No hesitation. No awareness of what he'd just shown me, of what I'd just seen. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Yeah, I said quietly, I guess I could. But I didn't hand it over. I slipped it back into my pocket instead. Vanessa frowned. What does that mean? Nothing, I said, just not tonight. I walked past them into the living room and set my keys down on the same table they'd been sitting on for years. Everything looked the same. Same couch, same TV, same frame photos along the wall, Ethan in Little League. Ethan at middle school graduation, Ethan in that same Colts jersey he wore in one of the pictures I just saw. Except now I couldn't look at them the same way. Because I realized something standing there. All those years I thought I was in the picture. Turns out, I was just the guy holding the camera. Emasumo. That night I didn't sleep. I laid there staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the house breathe. Pipes ticking. The faint hum of the refrigerator down the hall. At some point I heard them upstairs. Vanessa's voice low. Ethan answering. Normal conversation, like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just been erased from one of the biggest moments of his life. I turned onto my side, facing the empty space between me and the edge of the bed. 13 years. I met Ethan when he was 5. Couldn't tie his shoes without getting frustrated. Used to call me Dan for the first 6 months before Vanessa gently corrected him. I taught him how to drive in my old Ford F-150 out in a church parking lot on a Sunday afternoon. He was terrified at first. White-knuckled the steering wheel like it was going to bite him. "You're doing fine," I told him. "Just ease into it." He laughed when he finally got it moving without stalling. That same laugh he used earlier tonight, but it sounded different back then. Lighter. I paid for his braces, sat through every appointment, listened to him complain about rubber bands and sore gums. There was a night when he was 12, running a fever so high Vanessa was panicking. I stayed up with him, switching out cold towels, checking his temperature every hour. He held my hand at one point, half asleep. "Don't go," he mumbled. "I'm right here," I said. I meant it. I always meant it. And somewhere along the way, I guess I assumed that counted for something. I was wrong. Around 2 in the morning, I got up. Walked into the kitchen, flipped on the light. It buzzed for a second before settling, casting that same pale glow across the counter. I poured myself a glass of water, took a sip, set it down. The envelope was still in my pocket. I pulled it out, set it on the counter again, and stared at it. Then I laughed. Not loud, not angry. Just tired. I paid for my own humiliation, I said to nobody. The words hung there in the empty kitchen. And that was the moment something in me went quiet. Not broken. Not even angry anymore. Just clear. I picked up the envelope, walked back to the bedroom, and set it in the top drawer of my dresser. Closed it. And for the first time since Ethan showed me those photos, I wasn't thinking about the party. I was thinking about everything else. What was mine? What wasn't? And how long I'd been pretending those two things were the same. The next morning felt normal. That was the strange part. The sun came in through the kitchen window, the same way it always did, hitting the edge of the counter and catching the dust in the air. The coffee maker clicked, gurgled, filled the room with that familiar smell I'd relied on for years to start my day. For a few seconds, standing there barefoot on the tile, I almost convinced myself the night before hadn't happened. That I'd misunderstood something. That maybe there was an explanation I hadn't heard yet. I poured my coffee, took a sip, burned my tongue a little. Reality came back fast. Vanessa walked in wearing her robe hair pulled back, already scrolling through her phone. She glanced at me like she always did in the morning. Routine, neutral. "Morning," she said. "Morning?" Ethan came down a few minutes later, grabbing a protein bar off the counter without looking at either of us. "Hey," he muttered. "Same house, same people. Different everything." Nobody mentioned the night before. Not the party, not the photos, not the envelope I didn't give him. It was like they'd both decided without saying it that silence would smooth it over. That I'd get past it. That I always did. I watched them move around the kitchen, stepping around each other, opening cabinets, closing drawers. Small domestic things. The kind of things that used to feel like family. Now it just felt like noise. Ethan headed toward the door, keys in hand. "Hey," he said casually, not even turning around. "You still covering my insurance this summer, right? Before I leave for IU." There it was. Not an apology, not even acknowledgement. Just logistics. I set my mug down. "We'll talk about it." He paused just for a second, then shrugged. "Okay." Vanessa stepped in right after, like it had been rehearsed. "Also, my salon membership is up this week," she said. "Can you renew it? It's under your account." I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman I'd shared a bed with for over a decade. Built a life with. Paid bills with. Planned holidays with. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't wanted to see. She didn't think she'd done anything wrong. That hit harder than the photos. Yeah, I said quietly. I'll take a look at it. She nodded satisfied, already moving on to something else. Ethan walked out the front door. The garage door rumbled open a few seconds later. Then his engine turned over, familiar sound echoing through the house. Vanessa grabbed her purse. I've got a shift at the store today, she said. We'll talk later, okay? Sure. She hesitated like she might say more, then didn't. The door closed behind her. And just like that, I was alone. And I didn't go to work right away. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and stared at nothing for a while. The house felt different when it was empty. Quieter, but not peaceful. More like honest. I pulled my phone out and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name. Marla Henson. I hadn't talked to her in a couple years. She handled some paperwork when I bought that duplex in Noblesville back in 2023. Straight shooter, didn't sugarcoat anything. I hovered over her name for a second. This was the part where I could still back out. Tell myself I was overreacting, that families go through things, that one bad decision didn't erase 13 years. I could call Vanessa later, sit down, talk it through. Pretend. My thumb drifted away from the screen. I leaned back in the chair, exhaled slowly, and closed my eyes. Through the front window, I could see across the street. A man stood in his driveway, maybe early 40s, tossing a baseball back and forth with a kid who couldn't have been more than 10. The kid missed one, chased it into the grass laughing. The dad shook his head, smiling, hands on his hips. Simple moment. Nothing special. And for some reason, it hit me harder than anything from the night before. Because I recognized it. I'd been that guy. Or at least I thought I had. I opened my eyes, picked up my phone again, and hit call. Our son, sir. Daniel Marla's voice came through sharp and awake like it always was. Everything okay? Yeah, I said automatically, then corrected myself. Actually, no, not really. There was a pause, paper rustling on her end. Tell me what's going on. I kept it simple. Didn't dramatize it, didn't rant. Just laid it out. The party, the photos, the fact that I wasn't told, the financial stuff, what I'd been covering all these years. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she let out a slow breath. Okay, she said. First things first, take a step back emotionally for a second. I know that's easier said than done. Yeah. Do not do anything impulsive. No locking doors, no throwing things out, nothing that could come back on you legally. I figured. Good. Now, let's talk about what's actually in your name. That part took longer. We went through everything. The house refinanced in 2018 under just my name after Vanessa's credit issue. The truck mine. The accounts mostly mine with her as an authorized user on a few. Ethan's insurance, phone plan, gas card. All tied back to me. Marla was quiet for a second after we finished. Daniel, she said, I'm going to be very direct with you. Please do. You've been functioning as the financial backbone of that household, which is fine. But legally, that also means you have more control than you think. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. What does that mean in plain English? It means you can start separating things, carefully, cleanly, and within the law. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. And the house, Nesaru, that's where it gets more delicate, she said. But based on what you told me, you're not powerless here. I let that sink in. I'm not looking to hurt anyone, I said after a moment. I know, she replied, but you do need to protect yourself. And frankly, set some boundaries. Boundaries. Funny word. Felt like something I should have learned a long time ago. Okay, I said. What's step one? Start documenting everything she said. Accounts, payments, charges, and Daniel. Yeah, so fun. Take your time. Make sure whatever you do next, you can stand behind it 6 months from now. Good one, son. I hung up the phone and sat there for a while longer. Then I got up, grabbed my laptop, and opened it on the kitchen table. If I was going to do this, I needed to see things clearly, not emotionally. Factually, I logged into my bank account first, scrolled through recent transactions, groceries, utilities, gas, normal stuff. Then something caught my eye. A charge from the previous week, $642.75 Fisher's Event Catering. I stared at it, clicked on the details. Date matched. Saturday, the same day as the party. I leaned back slowly, a hollow feeling settling in my chest. They didn't just leave me out of it. They used my money to do it. I let out a quiet laugh, shook my head once. Of course, I muttered. I clicked through a few more statements. Another charge, local bakery in Fishers. Then a rental fee for a pavilion permit. All small enough to blend in. All tied to me. And suddenly, every memory from that kitchen the night before sharpened. Ethan flipping through those photos like they were nothing. Vanessa saying she didn't want drama. It wasn't just avoidance. It was planning. I sat there for over an hour, going through everything. Accounts, subscriptions, insurance, phone plans. Not making changes yet. Just understanding. Seeing the full picture for the first time. And with every click, something inside me settled further. Not colder. Just clearer. That night I came home like I always did. Same driveway, same garage, same front door. Inside, Vanessa was on the couch watching something on TV. Ethan was upstairs. She looked up when I walked in. Hey, she said, long day. Something like that. I set my keys down. She muted the TV. Daniel, about yesterday. It's fine, I said. And for the first time, I meant something different by it. She studied my face like she was trying to figure out what had changed. You sure, she asked? Yeah. There was a pause. Then she nodded slowly like she'd been given the answer she wanted. Good, she said. I was worried you were going to make a bigger deal out of it. I almost smiled. Almost. Ethan came down a few minutes later, grabbing a drink from the fridge. Hey, he said, did you think about the insurance thing? I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Yeah, I said. I've been thinking about a lot of things. He didn't catch it. Cool, he said. Just let me know. Vanessa picked up her phone again, conversation already over in her mind. And that's when it hit me. They weren't being cruel, not in the way people think. They were being comfortable. Comfortable assuming I'd always be there, always pay, always adjust, always accept. I stood there in that kitchen watching them go back to their normal lives. And I realized something simple. They thought silence would reset everything. I used to believe that too. By the time I got into bed that night, I already knew what I was going to do. I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. Vanessa was asleep beside me, breathing slow, and even like nothing in her world had shifted. I lay there on my back, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the faint tick of the hallway clock. At some point, I got up. Didn't turn on the bedroom light, just walked quietly down the hall, past the stairs into the kitchen. The house felt different at night. Honest. I sat at the table with my laptop and opened the account again. That catering charge, $642.75. I clicked into it, pulled up the invoice. Smoked ribs, pulled pork, cornbread trays, enough food for 40 people. I could almost hear Ethan's voice in my head from a week earlier. This place in Fishers, their ribs are insane. He'd said it like a recommendation. Like we might go together sometime. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I opened another tab. Started making a list. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. The next day I moved slow. Not because I didn't know what to do. Because I wanted to make sure I did it right. Marla's voice stayed in my head. Make sure you can stand behind it 6 months from now. So I didn't rush. I went to work, sat through meetings, answered emails, signed off on a job schedule in Noblesville that I barely paid attention to. But every spare minute I checked something, verified something, separated something. By late afternoon, I had a clear picture. What was mine? What wasn't? What I could change? What I shouldn't touch? No guesswork. No emotion. Just facts. Someone. That evening, I stopped by a storage place off 31. Nothing fancy. Just a row of metal units behind a chain-link fence. The kind of place you pass 100 times and never think about. I rented one month to month. Paid cash. The woman behind the desk didn't ask questions. Just handed me a key and pointed me to Unit 47. I stood there for a second after she walked away, key in my hand. This was it. The line. Once I started, there wasn't really a going back. I thought about Ethan at 10 years old running across a baseball field looking for me in the stands. I thought about Vanessa on our wedding day squeezing my hand like I was something steady. I thought about that kitchen, those photos, that moment where I realized I didn't belong in them. And then I unlocked the unit. Sure, sir. That night, I didn't say much. Vanessa made dinner. Something simple, chicken green beans. We ate at the table like we always did. Ethan talked about college orientation. Vanessa nodded along, asking questions. I listened, watched, took it all in one last time. Daniel, Vanessa said at one point, "Did you take care of that membership thing?" "Not yet," I said. "Well, don't forget, it expires Thursday." "I won't." Ethan looked up from his plate. "And the insurance. Surrender fornishim or such. I'm working on it." He nodded, satisfied. That was enough for him. Sir. After they went upstairs, I started. I didn't rush it. Didn't slam drawers or throw things into boxes. I moved carefully. Room by room. Vanessa's closet first. Clothes on hangers. Shoes lined up neatly on the bottom rack. Jewelry on the dresser. I took down each piece and folded it into plastic bins. Not out of kindness. Out of control. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it clean. No excuses for them later. Ethan's room was next. That one hit harder. Posters on the wall. A half-packed duffel bag for college. A pair of cleats by the door he hadn't worn in years but never threw away. I picked up a photo from his desk. Him at 14, baseball uniform, dirt on his cheek, grinning. I'd taken that picture. I set it down carefully. Packed everything else. Clothes, books, gaming console. Cables tangled together in a way only an 18-year-old could manage. Korean Surnam. Around midnight, I took the first load out to the truck. The air was cool, quiet street. A porch light flicked on somewhere down the block. I loaded the bins into the bed of the F-150, closed the tailgate softly, and stood there for a second. This was real now. Not a thought. Not a plan. Action. I drove to the storage unit, unloaded, came back. Did it again. And again. By 3 a.m, I had most of their personal things out. What stayed in the house, I made sure I could justify. Furniture I'd bought before the marriage. Items tied directly to my accounts. Nothing reckless. Nothing I couldn't explain. Westerer Wonder One. Right before sunrise, I made the last trip. When I got back, the sky was just starting to lighten. Soft gray over the rooftops. I didn't go back to bed. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. Vanessa came down first. Still in her robe, hair messy from sleep. She stopped halfway into the kitchen. "Daniel." Her voice had that edge to it. Confusion mixed with something else. Fear, maybe. Boxes lined the walls. Bins stacked neatly by the door. Her shoes in a row by the entryway. Ethan's duffel bag right on top. I didn't look at her right away. Just took a sip of coffee. Then set the mug down. "Morning." "What is this?" she asked, sharper now. "Your things." She blinked once, twice. "What are you talking about?" Ethan came down behind her, still half asleep. "Mom, what?" He stopped too. "Are you serious right now?" he said. I reached over and slid a small stack of papers across the table. "Account summaries, printouts, notes. Everything that's yours is there," I said. Packed, organized. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice rising. "You can't just do this." I met her eyes for the first time that morning. "Actually," I said, calm and steady, "I can." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. "This is insane. You're overreacting." Maybe I said, or maybe I'm just done pretending. He grabbed his keys off the counter. "Whatever, I'm leaving." "Go ahead." He stormed out to the garage. A second later, I heard the door slam. Then, nothing. No engine. Just silence. A few seconds passed. Then the garage door opened again. Ethan walked back in slower this time. "What did you do?" he asked. "I didn't do anything," I said. "I just stopped doing things." He stared at me, not understanding. "My gas card's not working," he said. "Yeah. And my insurance. Canceled as of this morning." Vanessa's face went pale. "Daniel, you can't I said again, quieter this time. Ethan looked between us. "You're really doing this?" I leaned back in my chair. "Your real father has a truck," I said. Let's see how far that goes. The words hung in the air. Not loud, not angry, just final. Ik should want someone. Still. Vanessa grabbed her phone, hands shaking now. I'm calling Rick. Go ahead. She stepped into the living room, already dialing. Ethan stood there in the kitchen looking at the boxes, then at me. For a second, just a second, I saw something crack. Not respect. Not yet. But confusion. Maybe the beginning of something else. Then it was gone. You didn't have to do this, he said. I nodded once. You're right, I said. I didn't. Surene was so. About 20 minutes later, Rick pulled into the driveway. Old pickup, loud engine. The kind of guy who wants you to hear him coming. He stepped out, looked at the stack of boxes through the open garage, then back at Vanessa. What the hell is this, he muttered. She walked toward him, already talking fast, explaining, blaming, trying to make sense of it out loud. I stayed inside. Didn't need to hear it. Didn't need to explain anything. I'd already said what mattered. Sure. I stood at the kitchen window watching as Rick slowly realized what he'd signed up for. Not a weekend dad. Not a photo opportunity. Responsibility. Bills. Reality. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't mine. The house was quiet again after they left. Not the kind of quiet that feels empty. The kind that feels earned. I stood there in the kitchen a long time after Rick's truck pulled away, watched the dust settle in the sunlight coming through the window, listened to the hum of the fridge, the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. No voices upstairs, no doors opening and closing. Just stillness. I picked up my coffee mug, lukewarm now, and took a sip anyway. It didn't taste great, but it didn't matter. For the first time in a while, I wasn't waiting for something. Free Turnefern. The next few days were strange. Not dramatic, just different. Vanessa texted me that afternoon. Vanessa, this is unbelievable. We need to talk. I didn't respond right away. Not out of spite, just I didn't have anything to say yet. Another message came a few hours later. Vanessa, you embarrassed us in front of Rick. I read that one twice, then set the phone down. That told me everything I needed to know. Tuesday night, I drove out to Noblesville. Checked on the duplex, walked through both units, made sure everything was in order. Routine stuff. But it grounded me. Reminded me I had something that was mine. Something I'd built without anyone else's expectations tied to it. On the way back, I stopped at a Walgreens. Sat in the parking lot for a minute, engine idling. I don't know why I stayed there. Maybe I just didn't feel like going home yet. That's when I saw him. Ethan. He was sitting in the passenger seat of a car I didn't recognize. Older sedan, rust around the wheel wells. Someone else driving. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically. Just not as sure of himself. He stared straight ahead, jaw tight, like he was trying to hold something together. For a second, I almost got out. Almost walked over, knocked on the window, asked if he was okay. That instinct didn't disappear overnight. 13 years doesn't just switch off. My hand even went to the door handle. Then I stopped, sat back, watched the car pull out of the lot and disappear into traffic. And I stayed right where I was. Who won the win? Wednesday morning, Marla called. Just checking in, she said. How are you holding up? I'm all right, I said. Quiet mostly. That's not a bad place to be. Number. She paused. Have they tried to contact you? Vanessa has. And mostly about how this looks. Marla let out a short breath through her nose. Of course it is. I almost smiled. I've started separating accounts, I said. Clean, like we talked about. Good, keep everything documented. And Daniel, yeah. Stay calm. That's your leverage right now. I know. Hang on, Mamon. By Friday, the messages shifted. Vanessa stopped sounding angry. Started sounding unsettled. Vanessa, we need to figure this out. Vanessa, Rick can't keep doing this long term. That one stuck with me. Not we miss you. Not I'm sorry. Just logistics. I didn't respond. Saturday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Hello. Daniel, Rick's voice, rougher than I remembered. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair. About what? Why never wanted to know. There was a pause. Then this situation. I almost laughed. You mean the one you stepped into? He didn't like that. Look, man, there's no reason to make this harder than it needs to be. No, I said, because from where I'm sitting, it already looks pretty simple. Another pause, longer this time. Ethan needs stability, Rick said. He's got college coming up. I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see it. You're right, I said. He does. And Vanessa? Vanessa made her choices, I cut in. Silence. Then quieter, Rick said, you're really just going to walk away like this. I thought about that. About everything I'd done over the years, everything I'd put in. Yeah, I said finally, I think I am. He exhaled frustration clear. This isn't over. I didn't raise my voice. It is for me. And I hung up. The following Sunday, I heard about the brunch. Church fellowship hall. Same crowd that had been at that party. Vanessa had always liked those gatherings. Coffee casseroles, small talk. Normal. Predictable. Safe. Apparently, she'd told a few people what happened. Not the truth. Her version. That I'd overreacted. That I'd thrown them out. That I'd become someone she didn't recognize. I listened to that secondhand through a neighbor who called to check in. I thanked her. Hung up. And sat there for a while. I could have ignored it. Stayed home. Let them have their version. But something about it didn't sit right. Not because I needed to defend myself. Because I wasn't going to let a lie become the final word. Oh, Mary, dairy you arm. I showed up that afternoon. Didn't rush, didn't make an entrance. Just walked into the hall like I belonged there. Because I did. The place smelled like coffee and baked ham. Folding tables set up in rows. People talking in low voices, laughing here and there. A few heads turned when I came in. Not many, but enough. Vanessa was near the back, talking to a couple women from church. Rick stood off to the side, arms crossed, trying to look comfortable. Ethan sat at one of the tables, staring down at his hands. Vanessa saw me first. Her face changed immediately. Surprise, then something sharper. Daniel, she said, stepping toward me. What are you doing here? I kept my voice even. Same as everyone else, stopping by. She glanced around, clearly aware of the eyes on us. This isn't the time. I'm not here to argue, I said. Rick walked over, then slower, cautious. We don't need a scene, he said. I nodded. Good. Then let's not make one. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a thin folder. Set it on the nearest table. Didn't slam it, didn't make a show of it. Just placed it there. Vanessa's eyes flicked down to it, then back up to me. What is that? Tumin. Just some clarification, I said. A few people nearby had gone quiet now. Not obvious. Just listening. I opened the folder. Pulled out a single sheet. Vanessa's been telling people I overreacted, I said calmly. That I made things difficult for no reason. She stiffened. Daniel, we could first hear in our renounce. I held up a hand, not aggressive, just enough to pause her. I wasn't invited to Ethan's graduation party, I said. That's a fact. Murmurs soft, barely there. I slid the next paper forward. This is the catering charge, paid from my account. Rick's jaw tightened. Vanessa didn't speak. I didn't look at either of them. Just kept my tone steady. For 13 years, I covered most of the major expenses in that house. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. I glanced over at Ethan then. He was looking at the papers now. Really looking. I didn't expect a thank you, I said, but I did expect basic respect. The room was quiet now. Not tense. Just still. I closed the folder. Looked back at Vanessa. You didn't lose me when I packed your things, I said. You lost me when I was good enough to pay, but not good enough to stand in the picture. No one spoke. Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it again. Rick shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable now. And Ethan finally looked up at me. Not with anger. Not this time. Something else. Something closer to understanding. Srenan and a once. I didn't stay long after that. Didn't need to. I'd said what mattered. As I walked out of the hall, the afternoon light hit my face warm and steady. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. The house settled into a new rhythm after that. Not right away. At first it felt too quiet, like something was missing even when I knew exactly what that something had been. I'd catch myself listening for footsteps upstairs, the sound of the garage door, Vanessa moving around the kitchen in the morning. Then I'd remember, and the silence would come back not heavy, just real. He. A few days after the brunch, I got a text from Ethan. It came in late, around 9:30 at night. I was sitting in the living room TV in, but muted flipping through channels without really watching anything. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. Ethan, hey. I stared at it for a second before picking it up. Another message came through. Ethan, can we talk? I leaned back against the couch, took a breath, then typed back. Me, what about? There was a pause, a couple minutes. Then it remains. Ethan, I didn't think it would go this far. I read that twice. Not I'm sorry. Not yet. Just confusion. I set the phone down for a moment, looked around the room. Same furniture, same photos, same life. But it felt different now. Clearer. I picked the phone back up. Me, this was never about the party. Another pause. Then, Aquin. Ethan, I know. That surprised me. I waited. A few seconds later, Ethan, I thought you'd be okay with it. There it was. 18 years old. Still thinking everything could be smoothed over if you didn't look at it too closely. I could picture him sitting somewhere, maybe in Rick's truck, maybe on a couch that didn't feel like his trying to figure out what had changed, what he'd missed. I typed slowly. Me, I was okay with a lot of things for a long time. The typing dots appeared, disappeared, came back. Then near Wes Dewin. Ethan, yeah. That was all. No big apology, no dramatic moment. Just a kid starting to understand something he hadn't thought about before. I didn't push it. Didn't lecture him. Didn't try to fix it. Some things take time. Me, we can talk. Not tonight. He replied a minute later. Ethan, okay. And that was it. Matsurn Miss Hornan. Vanessa never reached out again. Not directly. I heard things here and there. From neighbors, from people at church. She stayed with Rick for a while. That didn't last. Turns out being part of a picture and being part of a life are two different things. She moved in with her sister down in Indianapolis after that. No big confrontation. No dramatic goodbye. Just distance. So, I spent that time putting things in order. Practical stuff. Closed accounts that didn't need to stay open. Updated passwords. Met with Marla again to make sure everything was clean moving forward. Changed beneficiaries. Adjusted paperwork. All the quiet things nobody sees. The kind of work that doesn't feel like revenge. But it is in its own way. Because it means you're done being taken for granted. Some mornings I still wake up early. Old habits. I make coffee, stand by the kitchen window. Watch the street come to life. Same neighbor across the way, still tossing that baseball with his kid. Same dog barking down the block. Same mail truck making its rounds. Nothing out there changed. Just me. Bunrad and Durham. A couple weeks later, I met Ethan for lunch. Nothing fancy, just a diner off Keystone, the kind of place with laminated menus and coffee that's always a little too hot. He looked different. Not older. Just quieter. We sat across from each other for a minute before either of us said anything. Finally, he cleared his throat. I didn't know, he said. I nodded. I figured. He looked down at his hands. I mean, I knew you paid for stuff. I just didn't think about it. Most people don't, I said. That wasn't bitterness. Just the truth. He glanced up at me. You really weren't invited. Number. He sat back processing that. That's messed up. I almost smiled at that. Simple, direct. Late. But honest. We talked a little longer after that. Nothing heavy. College plans, classes, where he'd be staying. I told him I was glad he was going. And I meant it. When the check came, I reached for it out of habit. Then stopped. Looked at him. He hesitated. Then pulled out his own wallet. It wasn't smooth. Took him a second to count it out. But he did it. And that mattered more than anything he could have said. Come in on this, so. That afternoon, I drove home with the windows down, warm air coming in carrying the smell of cut grass from somewhere nearby. I turned onto my street, pulled into the driveway, and sat there for a moment before getting out. The house looked the same from the outside. Always does. But inside, it felt like mine again. Not because nobody else was there. Because I wasn't trying to be something I wasn't anymore. So, at my age, you stop chasing certain things. Approval, recognition. The idea that if you just do enough, give enough, show up enough, people will see you the way you hope they will. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they can't. And that's not something you fix by trying harder. It's something you accept. And then you decide what you're willing to live with. Our Deki. I still think about that night in the kitchen sometimes. The photos, the silence, the moment everything shifted. Not with anger, just clarity. Because in the end, it wasn't about being left out of a party. It was about finally seeing where I stood and choosing not to stand there anymore. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect, you already know that choice isn't easy. But it is simple. Thanks for listening.